Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining the second Commercial Aviation Workgroup meeting. For the public attending the meeting, please keep your microphone and video off throughout the whole meeting unless you are called on during public comment, which will be from 10:30 to 10:50 a.m. Workgroup members online, please keep your microphone on mute unless you are speaking during the meeting, and if you have a comment or question during the meeting, please use the hand raise button. As a reminder, members of the public will be muted unless you are called on during public comment, in which I will unmute you to speak. Otherwise, please be respectful during the meeting. Thank you.
All right, Christina, do we need to wait any longer? Give it a couple more minutes.
I think I'm letting people in as we go, but I think it's okay to start now.
Okay, great. Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome. I'm Evan Nordby. I was elected the acting chair at the July meeting. As you'll notice, we are meeting by Zoom rather than meeting in a hybrid format as we anticipated back in July. And for anyone who didn't see our announcement on that, we had anticipated in July that we would have a presentation from JBLM, since the first order of business in the statute that created our work group was to address the military airspace issues. They were not available today, and so it made sense to me that we have this meeting by Zoom rather than bringing everyone in person to Olympia for a relatively short meeting that's essentially kind of procedural in nature rather than kind of a substantive meeting. So that's why we're on Zoom. The first order of business, as I recall, the vote that I would be the acting chair was that I would be the acting chair until the beginning of the next meeting. So I think the first thing we should do is, should I continue to be the acting chair? And does anyone want to make a motion on yay or nay on that subject?
I move that you continue as the acting chair until we get the full committee.
Second.
Right. Is there a debate on that, or should we call the vote? All right. Is there a motion that or I ask for unanimous consent that I continue as the chair then?
Agreed.
Agreed.
All right. Motion passes. So I'll continue to chair the meeting until the beginning of the next meeting. We have 7 current well, I should say we have 2 new members who've been appointed, and one of them is here today. Mr. Wirt, I'm sorry I didn't warn you that I would call on you this soon, but Mr. Wirt, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, good morning, everyone. My name is Gary Wirt. I live in Yakima. I'm retired from the Federal Aviation Administration. And during my 35-year career with FAA, I held various positions, including dealing with flight operations, including 5 years in Japan and 6 years in Europe, and Atlanta and Sacramento and Seattle and Washington, D.C. During my time in Washington, D.C., I had responsibility for ongoing development of the United States Standard for Terminal Flight Procedures, which is known as TERPS to you aviation buffs. And as part of that, my duty was to implement instrument flight procedures nationwide that are incorporated into the FARs under FAR Part 95 and 97. So currently, I am vice president of All Aboard Washington, which is a 501c3 organization that has been promoting rail as an integral part of Washington State's transportation solutions for more than 40 years. Thank you.
All right. Well, welcome to the group, and thanks for that intro. I know that at the July meeting, there were some of us who were particularly interested in hearing on the how we might integrate high-speed rail into the mission of the work group. So that's great. All right. We anticipate that there may be some more appointments to the group, but right now we're considerably under the 19 members that the statute calls for, and hoping that some members will be reappointed and that some new members will be appointed. So I prepared, as I said I would at the last meeting, I prepared a draft charter. And Christina, were you able to email that to everybody? Oh no, you did actually. I got the email just as I was logging in. Sorry. Obviously, I would have preferred to send that around ahead of the meeting. But do you all want to open up that document and take a look at it now, and we can talk about it? You can suggest edits. We can edit it. If no one has any edits, we can move forward with it. But I intended it to be a starting point for us, a starting point for discussion, and not a final work. So
I would hate to really get too in depth and make comments on something that I'm just reading for the first time. I'd prefer to actually put some thought into it. Personally.
Yeah, I concur.
yeah, completely reasonable.
And just a question, can we perhaps submit comments by email or online? Can we coordinate some of this in between meetings?
So there's always a question of how much coordination we can do between meetings because of the State Public Meetings Act. But I'm happy, if you have comments, we can talk about them right now, or we could talk one-on-one about them. I don't think we can have an email list of everybody.
I'm wondering if we can create like just a kind of online portal for us to be able to make comments in and dish it out that way. So that way there isn't any kind of cross conversation that can, create an issue.
Yeah.
Evan, if I can step in and help you with that.
Sure.
It's perfectly fine to send for everybody to send their email their comments to you and to copy the rest of the group. But nobody can respond to that. So no reply alls.
Okay. That's extremely useful. So, I'll say what I did was to draft that was I used as an outline the charter of the prior commission, and then heavily edited that and added to that the new statute and with the new mission of this work group as given by the legislature and the governor, and then so that's kind of the but I intended to be a first draft. There's a section from that prior charter that I cut out because as I was reading it, it was a statement of guiding principles. And I felt like we ought to have a discussion if we're what our guiding principles should be. And I didn't, but I could circulate that section, or you could find that section from that prior charter online. And then similarly, they have a long scope of work section that was stating the mission and timeline of the prior commission, which was essentially accomplished and is all in the past. So I took that portion out. But so do we want to talk about the draft charter any further, or move on?
I think we ought to have a chance to review it and give you comments and talk about it at the next meeting.
Okay, sounds good. Next item on our agenda is the annual report, the statute charges us with submitting a first annual report addressing the military airspace issue. I'm paraphrasing a bit. And it charged us to have done that prior to our last meeting. So I suppose at some point we should submit that report. That's part of why we had, as you all will recall, why we had asked to try to get JBLM to speak to us today. What do we think we should do as far as creating an annual report on at least addressing that we're sort of thinking about addressing the issue that was actually presented, the initial issue?
Well, the one thing we need to tell them is that our membership hasn't been named yet. We've had 2 meetings, but until we get the full committee, it's very hard for us to make any decisions that's relevant.
Can I comment on that just a second, Evan? I had a conversation, it's been a year or so ago, with Warren, who's the chair, of the commercial, what's his last name? I'll think of it in a second. But at any rate, he told me that for the commercial aviation coordinating committee, that some of the vacancies that they had never were filled in the whole time they were in existence. So I don't think we can hold our breath waiting for those positions to all be filled.
Yeah, that's Warren Hendrickson is the gentleman.
That's
That's right.
Well, one of the other things we have facing us is the same as the whole rest of the United States, is that we have an election. And by next time that we meet, we'll have a new governor. So we're not really sure what the new governor is going to say.
Right. I think, Mr. Ward, what I was thinking about this is especially when I was reading over the statute and kind of our mission, and there's a difference between having fewer than half of our allotted membership and having more than half, 3/4, as far as our mission and the scope. I mean, obviously the legislature designed the committee to try to get as a wide range of perspectives. So I think actually your point came up at the July meeting too, is that we couldn't expect necessarily that we would always have a full complement. And I think the analogy I drew was like the U.S. House of Representatives is authorized 435 members and never actually has 435 members. Right. I mean, I think there's a balance, but I think Boris's point about that the election is in a month, and we all serve at the pleasure of the governor. So for their terms who've been appointed. So, and then we will, one way or the other, we'll have a new governor. So.
Yeah, this is Charlie again. I like that, Evan. I think the same thing. It's like we could wait forever. We could have a new governor. We have all these dynamics that we don't have any control over. So I say, well, I would like the motion that we continue to move forward. And as we gain momentum and an understanding of what we're really doing, more people will be added to the committee. I think I'd like to see us go forward. Because if we sit here and do kind of like what we're talking about now, our next meeting is going to be exactly like this one. We have no direction. We're still trying to figure out what we're going to do. Well, we're going to wait until we move forward. I mean, I'd like to see us at least consider having a consultant hired by the state so that we could organize this and have somebody coordinate our team, coordinate what we're doing. We're all busy, and we can't put the burden on you to kind of oversee all of this while you have your other responsibilities of life. I think we should move in a direction to go forward. Nobody's giving us a high level of direction. So it's up to us to do this. So I say let's start to move forward in a direction that takes this where we want to go. Thank you.
And I think the question to you then is, can we put together a outline of an RFP to go out to look for a consultant? And number one, do you have the money to pay them?
The legislation that created this group did allow a WashDOT to do the process of hiring a consultant on behalf of the work group and the funding to do that. And so that was anticipated. It has to be the work group that makes the selection, but it will go through the state process. So it'll be my office working very closely with the work group. And as you recall at the meeting in July, I gave you a draft RFQ that I had put together, so that can be a starting point for you to use. And I apologize for changing the subject just briefly, but I wanted to note, Mr. Chair, that the other new appointee to the group, Maria Bateola, has joined us, so she's online here. Maria, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, Maria, good morning. I'm Evan Norby. I'm the acting chair of the committee. And yes, please introduce yourself.
Good morning, Acting Chair. My name is Maria Batiola, and I was appointed by the governor to fill the statewide environmental organization position. So I just want to comment. I have been listening and really appreciate the inability of our group to move forward. And I say our group to move forward. I believe that we can move with a preliminary charter, fully saying that if we can adopt it, knowing full well it may need refinements with the other members. And also the budget process is moving. I think we need to have either a small budget committee or just say, what are the items we need? So I do have a couple of ideas regarding the charter just to round it out for other community environmental members. And my apologies for, we had some technical issues. So thank you so much.
Okay. All right, thanks. Did you get the draft charter this morning? And actually, Mr. Work, did you also get it on the email?
Yes, I do, and that's why I wanted to share some suggested amendments to it, which are very simple.
Okay, great. Right before you joined, I mean, if you want to share them now, you can. Or right before you joined, Anne said that we would not violate the Open Meetings Act if you email edits to me and CC the group, but you can't. Nobody can reply all to the. Where it becomes a discussion and there becomes a meeting.
Yes, my edits are really simple because I do believe it might help us move to adopt this preliminary charter. So if I may, in terms of the whereases, just addition of one whereas where after the last one. Whereas Washington State passed the Healthy Environment for All and the Climate Commitments Act that gives guidance on environmental and community impacts. And then, of course, the closing. Therefore, the Commercial Aviation Workgroup is created with the following charter to recommend Washington State's transportation system of tomorrow. I think that gives enough of a larger tent for other members to come in and be able to help move this forward.
And since I'm a new kid on the block, I did not receive your draft RFP. Could you send that to me, please?
That's actually Mr. Wirt and Ms. Badiola. That's part of a whole bunch of information that we gave the group when they started. So yeah, we'll be sending all of that to you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So I want to clarify, Ms. Badiola, did you, before you joined the meeting, there were several members who suggested that they wanted more time to, I see, they wanted more time to review the draft charter, which I only circulated shortly before the meeting started this morning. before we started editing and trying to adopt it. And I see, Alicia, Ms. Crank, you're raising your hand here in the chat. Are you?
Yeah, I can wait for you to finish your statement though.
Oh, sure. So I wanted to clarify if you were actually making a motion to add that to the document now and then to try to vote on it. And just the sense of the group was, let's edit this between now and our next meeting and then maybe adopt it at the next meeting.
This is
Yeah,
because most people haven't seen it or had a chance to digest it. And my comment was going to be, since we're back to this, I would like for us to solidify what is the best way to submit those edits and suggestions. I'm concerned that if we do a bunch of emails going back and forth, no one's going to be happy with that and things will get lost in the shuffle. So I want to again propose creating maybe some kind of, Google form, something that people can plug their comments in at one time and be able to look at it that way instead of clogging up people's inboxes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Google Docs is a good tool for that because people can edit it, and as we go. I don't know, Anne, if we have the capability to set something like that up.
We could do that, but I have a concern that if you're editing it on the fly, that would run afoul of the public meeting laws.
Okay.
Because that really is deliberation. So,
which again, I was thinking more like a Google form or something where you can just kind of plop in your comments and suggestions without having to actually mess with the document itself. But yeah, we can try to figure something out. But I just think emails going back and forth between everybody is not going to be productive.
Mr. Chairman, I have two comments on that. Number one, I think if we did that and did not violate the Open Public Meetings Act, is that we would have to make that available to everybody to read as we did it. It couldn't just be between the members of the group. Other than that, we're trying to have an official meeting. I think is it more than 3 people commenting on the same thing almost constitutes an official meeting. The other one is on trying to do something on the charter. I just looked at the time on when I received mine. I received mine 46 minutes ago. I have not read it and I cannot comment on it at this time.
Yeah, right. I was, yeah. So I think that and is it possible to I think the idea of having one place, like one person or one email to send comments to is a great idea, and it doesn't necessarily have to be me or my email address. Is that something, because it's possible that there may be members of the public who want to comment too, and we might want to see the draft and might want to send in comments on it.
I would recommend that everybody, all the appointed members, just send your comments to Christina, and that way she can collate them, and then at the next meeting, then the group can review all of it. And the public, there's a portal for public comments, so people are always welcome to send their comments there.
Okay. I didn't want to overload Christina, but that is kind of what I had in mind.
And Anne, could you just check with the state attorney general and find out? There may be a simple answer that they have used on other committees that we're struggling with, and there already may be an answer there. And that might be the simplest way. They'll either I usually find if you ask an attorney how to do something, they'll tell you. If you try to do something, they'll tell you can't.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely, I will do that. And I want to run by the Attorney General's office also. First off, I can ask them for advice, but when I did ask about them participating and really providing legal service to the work group, they are not allowed to do that because they work for the state and this work group isn't the state. So I can ask for their advice, but that was one of the elements that I put in the draft RFQ for consulting services, that you have somebody that's got some Washington State legal chops that can advise the group. Because I'm a little bit concerned, and I'll just go ahead and raise this, and I apologize for being a little bit mouthy, Mr. Chair. But I am happy that we've got 2 new appointees, but we've got 3 existing appointees who technically are no longer on the work group because their terms have expired. So I really think we need to give the governor's office some grace to get through their transition and kind of finish their work to make sure that we've got a work group that's as complete as can be and in good standing.
That it puzzles me that we're not considered, given that we've been created by the legislature, that we're not considered an entity of the state that could be represented by the Attorney General's office. But yeah, I don't know. Okay.
Well, let's see. And this is Charlie again, and I will chime in since what I was talking about, we had transitions from the introductions to the charter to back to now we don't have a full committee. And I am one of the people that our term has expired. Who do we talk to about this? Do I just go reapply, or should this be handled internally? Because now it's got to that point with the short term. Some of the short term people have expired. Is the governor's office, have they told you that they intend to reappoint people, and when will that happen? Or give me a little high level thinking on that.
Yeah, thank you. I should probably have addressed this anyway. As you recall, at the July meeting, the governor's office had shared with me that they were working on completing the appointments and thought that would be completed by October. That's the reason that this meeting was scheduled for this time. But since then, that has not happened. These 2 new appointments were just made this week. And the governor's office is already going through kind of the turmoil of transition. They've been losing staff and are short-staffed, and so I'm just not even getting the good, clear communication that we had before. And so I don't have some good, clear direction, and that's where I'm saying that it might be prudent to wait until there's a new governor and new staff, because I know that this is a very important issue, and I would hate for the new governor and their staff to miss out on the opportunity to give whatever direction they might. Also, if you recall, one of the things that the appointed members need to do, and you are the voting members, you need to invite the non-voting members to the group. And some of those include legislative representatives. And so since they're the one that wrote this legislation to begin with, they might have some input that they'd like to share.
Was there was there a list of kind of statutorily required non-voting members that we were formally invite?
Yes, there is.
Okay.
And we can share that again with folks.
Okay, that's interesting. I'm Charlie again here. So that list that we have, the people that have to be invited, who's the official designee to invite those people?
It's all of you. It's the work group.
It's a work group that we don't have a charter. So we don't have a charter, and we're supposed to invite these people, but yet as a group, we don't have anybody identified to invite these people. And of course that takes work. And the work is like what I was alluding to at least we need somebody on staff to take care of this. And we have a lot of things that need to be done, but we don't have anybody to do it. And that's why I was alluding to hiring either a facilitating consultant or somebody to take this workload and run with it. Thank you.
Well, here's what I'm thinking. We had an informal committee of two, I suppose, on the draft charter, and we had Ms. Crank, as I recall, at the July meeting, you were going to work on an issue as well, and I think it was related to recruiting non-voting members.
It was related to that. I created, again, a Google form for people to fill out and say who they felt like it was going to be. I think that link finally went out 9 days ago. And so I don't think everyone has seen it or had a chance to look at it yet. So it probably would be prudent to have that go out again to be able to do that. And again, I'm just going to also kind of echo what Charles is saying as well. I don't want us to move too far away I hate that there's some dangling fruit happening, including the members who have officially expired off, kind of wanting to know what that's going to look like for us. And so that, people are using their time as best as possible. So,
right.
Yeah.
Would you be willing to continue to carry the torch for the finding us non-voting members that aren't the ones that are statutorily required, the legislature representatives?
I'm happy to do that. I think 2 people submitted their suggestions already, but if people still need that link or have that email resent to them, we can make that happen too.
Yeah. Okay, that's okay. And so does someone want to volunteer to be the to work on the draft RFP for a consultant issue?
Since I have done probably more RFPs in my life or approved them, I'll be happy to work on that. I will take what Ann has said. I will talk to, I will check and see what that might compare with what other people have done. As you know, Evan, I just sent you some information on a couple of fairly similar projects that were done in San Diego. And I think we certainly could get a copy of their RFPs to see how they put theirs together to do exactly almost the same thing that we're doing.
That's great. And anybody who wants to work with Oris on that, if you can speak up now or get with him after the meeting, because I think that that is definitely something we can work on a draft of to try to move the ball forward on that.
Yeah, this is Charlie, Chairman. Yeah, of course. I'd like to work with Horace. I can review what he's got and what Ann has. But again, now we start talking about how do we communicate back and forth? What the public meetings issue?
So I think that you can have. There's a threshold under which you can have a conversation, and it doesn't become a. That's this open question we had, and I think it is fewer than a. Well, I shouldn't. We should at least try to get the Attorney General to answer that question, or find something online. What? Okay, I will try to find the answer to that from publicly available sources. Scribbling on my note down here. Who would like to work with me on a very brief annual report to the legislature ahead of their session that's going to begin in January? Just essentially, I mean, it'll be a status update, and we'll update what we have to update.
Why don't you use Google AI?
Afraid of what it would give me.
Mr. Chair, I'll help.
Okay, great. Sorry, was that Maria?
Yes, please.
Okay, great.
This is Rich Mueller. I can help with editing type things. I don't know about as far as content is concerned.
I'm envisioning that it will probably fit on one page.
Okay.
That's a letter format. Just you know. Okay. Is there anything else that well, before I get to that, we did have I would say a media inquiry, and they are interested in knowing our mission, hopes, and timeline. I appreciate that their care for our hopes. No, I more seriously, though, I wanted to mention that to the group because I want to hear from you all if you have any ideas along that before we respond, or any of us start talking to the media about the group. And since they were nice enough to kind of give us an outline of what they wanted to ask about.
I received a request, and I told them that it really had to come from the chairman after, I explained that we'd only had the one meeting and that we were still in the formation. We hadn't even got even half of our committee yet, and that they would have to wait until we did have the answers to the questions they were asking. And then they let it go at that. They seemed to believe me. And I think that was all that we could tell them at the time, and be honest about it. The last thing we want to do is blow some smoke their way and then have them come after us with a vengeance.
I should note too that obviously this is a public meeting, and I did see there are some media in attendance on this call too. So we may be answering their questions as we're talking about this. Does anyone else kind of want to weigh in on what we should do with that inquiry?
I'm just going to second what Oris said. I don't want us to create a story that's not necessarily true if we're still trying to, get our grounding going. Especially we even have questions about, the status of membership. So I think there are some key things we need to get clarified and cleaned up before we move forward with anything else.
I think if they're listening to this meeting today, they certainly have something they can write about. The reason that we're not ready to give them a statement of mission and time levels and everything else, we're trying.
Right.
I think we have really two things we really have to do, and that number one is get our statement put together that you're working on. I think we need to send it out for more than an hour before the meeting and get some comments in. We have to firm that up, and the other one was we have to get an RFP out and start through the state process to get a consultant. And if I understand that it goes through the regular state process, I hope these people, the rest of our members, understand how long it takes to go through the state procurement process. It's not immediate. And any ideas on how long that would take?
I'm gonna say 2 months minimum, and that's from when we give the contracts people a document that's all ready to go. And part of that is how long you want to give proposers to prepare their proposal from when they first see it.
The one thing we don't want to do, and again, as I said, having sent out probably hundreds of RFP, requests for proposals, is that we don't want to make it so onerous that these people spend hours and hours and hours. I've seen people spend thousands and hundreds of thousands of dollars on trying to answer something, and it's not really fair to them. And we also don't want to do it over the Christmas holidays, because that's even worse. From our standpoint, we want to get it off of our table, but then they have to work over the holidays, and that's not fair either. So my hope is that we could have something ready to go after the first of the year. That's not that far away, rather than try to do it. But before we have that, we have to have another meeting, and I think another meeting may be further away than that. So I think on our next meeting, we have to have two things, and that's that ready to go, and also our rules of engagement. And then once we agree on that, then I think we can move forward. But we need more, probably now with the 3 or 4 people who have not been reappointed. I'll bet we don't have 5 people that are legitimate appointees at this point in time on a 19-member board. And I don't think we ought to have the press, the people that are on here that are the citizens, think that there's going to be 5 or 6 people that are going to control and run this whole process.
Yeah.
So do we need to just, reset our timeline? Just because there is so much kind of hanging chads, if you will, right now, whether it's with, the board appointments, those that are currently on, if they're staying on, that type of thing. And again, if we're kind of being held off because of what's going on with the changes in office and stuff, maybe it just makes sense to kind of reset some of our timeline around what we're trying to do, because again, it could insanely change between now and January, depending on who's in leadership. And I think this is a very important important work group and conversation to have. And I'm going to put on my Seattle sports commissioner hat for a second, which is, we talk about multimodal and all these other things. We have huge events coming into Greater Seattle, into the state. And a lot of, I think what we're going to talk about might have some level of reflection for 2026. When FIFA is here, and there is going to be statewide stuff happening. So multiple airports and areas will be impacted. So I think there's some very exciting conversations that we can have with that in mind. But I'd much rather we do it once we have a firmer footing on just how many commissioners or work group members do we have to start that conversation. That's my 2 cents on it. That's how I think it is. And I would just hate to waste the public's time, commissioner's time, trying to kind of go around in circles, figuring out what we should be talking about when we don't have kind of that core stuff knocked down yet. Not that it's any fault of our own, we're, bureaucracy, right? So it's, trying to wait for them to get that in order, but I don't want us spinning our wheels in the process and waiting for the powers that be to do what they need to do.
Hear, hear.
Yeah. I mean, one thing we could do is essentially not set a new meeting now, but anticipate that a new meeting would be in the early part of next year, 2025, after the holidays and after the new governor is in office. And ideally between then and now, there'd be some more appointments, and we can spend some time drafting these documents that we've been talking about. because I think you're right. I think we have to adjust the timeline. So.
Well, Chairman, I think you're absolutely correct. I think that's basically the timeline we have to work on is something after the first of the year. I certainly think we can have a draft RFP done by that point in time. And I think you can get all the comments back on what you sent out by then. And hopefully we'll have a majority of members, whatever a majority is going to be, because we haven't decided what the majority is yet. What number it's going to be, and then we'll be ready to go, and then we can start doing the things that we're supposed to do.
Okay.
Do you need that in the motion?
You could yes, if you want to make that as in a motion format.
I would like to make a motion that we have our next meeting to be set sometime after the first of the year, at which time we have a reasonable number of our members officially on board. 2, that we have the RFP draft ready, and we also have our draft of the charter ready. And at that time, we can then vote on both of those items. That's my motion.
Second.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to also add that I think by then we should be prepared to invite the non-voting members. Everybody should, I think, submit their suggestions for the non-voting members so we could proceed with that at the same time.
Okay. Are there any other proposed amendments to the motion that we would vote first? Okay. So we should vote on Mr. Wert's amendment to the motion. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, motion carries unanimously.
I abstain.
All right, Ms. Badiola.
Hi, I just I tried to raise my hand.
I saw it there. Yeah.
Yeah, my only concern as the amendment to process the non-voting members is that we will not have the benefit of suggestions from the new appointees for non-voting members. So it's like the motion passed and all I'm doing is recording abstention.
Well, so Ms. Crank is going to well, she circulated about a week ago, but I heard her say that she was going to ask Christina to recirculate a Google form link among the membership of the committee where we were going to submit names. And I said she had received a couple of names for suggestions of non-voting members select. So you'll get that, and Mr. Wirt can get that, and then submit those. So that you will have the option.
Yeah, you didn't get it because they sent it 9 days ago. So it was before sounds like you guys got appointed. So I'll ask them to resubmit it.
Yeah, that is not my concern. My concern is with the new appointees, they won't have the opportunity to make suggestions for non-voting members. That is all. I'm not standing in the way of what you're doing, but I just wanted to record that.
Right. But that's how we decided that we would make suggestions for non-voting members, was submitting them through that link to Ms. Crank, who was going to compile them and then recirculate them to the group. So you have that opportunity.
I think she's talking about future appointees, not her, but
Right.
Other new members of the board that have not been appointed yet.
Well, my comment was going to be, this is a rolling process, right? It's not just going to be a one-off.
Well, I think if the idea is to get us to convene and have a really good comprehensive perspectives discussion, it would be good to really attempt to have a full voting set of members and a full voting set of non-members, because those individuals and their organizations are interested in participating in really creating the transportation system of the future.
But we also can't be paralyzed by waiting and waiting and waiting and never being full And that's kind of part of the conversation we're having is we have to start moving forward. We can't just wait and wait and wait. I think if the right people come along that want to be part of it, we can go, but we have to start making forward motion because we're just treading water right now. If we're even treading water, maybe we're taking on water, but we need to be moving forward. I think is very important.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. That's why I didn't vote no. I just abstained.
Okay. Okay, so we'll note one abstention on the amendment vote. Do we need further debate on the Mr. Dunham's motion to restate it, draft the RFP and for consideration, edit the draft charter, and then consider it at the next meeting, and compile a list of potential non-voting member invites between now and a next meeting date TBD. Or do I have a motion for a vote to close debate on that? All right, I ask unanimous consent that we end debate on the motion and move to a vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Hearing no objection, passes by unanimous consent. So now the vote on the motion itself. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Any abstentions? All right. Motion passes unanimously. Okay. That takes us to the would someone want to make a motion as to how we want to handle the annual report? We're going to draft an annual report. We had talked about drafting an annual report that wasn't included in Mr. Dunham's motion. We have the ad hoc committee to work on drafting the annual report, me, Ms. Badiola, and Mr. Mueller. Should we? I mean, I would envision maybe that we might want to set a date to submit that, a way for it would be great to have a way to talk about what's in it, but that raises a public meeting question.
I have a question that maybe Ann can answer on this. Is it possible, since we haven't set up our rules, all right, and I worry about the state rules of what we're doing.
Yeah.
Could the chairman send out a copy of the report to the members and have us vote on it by email? Will that count rather than have to have a meeting of us to just the vote on the approval of his draft report?
That is still a deliberation.
Okay.
So that would be have the public notice and all of that kind of stuff.
Okay.
But, okay.
So here's what maybe makes sense is if we have to have a meeting only to adopt the annual report, then essentially the only item on the agenda is, and we would circulate the proposed annual report ahead of that, and then the current members would just be log on, vote, give public notice, log on, vote on that, and then it's the only item on the agenda.
A one item
meeting
agenda. Because if you don't put it on the agenda, you can't talk about it.
Exactly.
That would work for me. You write it, you have a meeting. It shouldn't take more than 15 minutes for all of us to get on, say yes, I hate to do it this way. It's making a lot of work for a lot of people, but we're trying to walk within the state rules.
Yeah, and I think we need to move on, so I'm all in favor of that.
Yeah.
Short, quick meeting.
Okay. Should we set a date for that now?
What is the timeline that we have to put a public notice out for the public meeting, for the meeting? So how many days in advance do we have to notify
And do you know?
the public that there's going to be a meeting?
I'm not sure, Christina, I'm gonna guess 2 weeks, but.
2 weeks.
Yeah.
Okay. Are there, if we have dates toward the end of, I mean, we could do this pretty quickly because there's not this much to report. Would everyone be able to log on for a short meeting on something like October 29th?
Works for me.
Let me see, October 29th. I think I can do that. I will be out of town, but I think I can log on my phone if it's just short.
Yeah, I'll be available.
And Mr. Chair, myself and I don't know about some of the other members of the group, but there's a state airports conference going on at that time. But again, for a short meeting, we could do that in a different location.
Okay. Could everyone do at 9 a.m. on October 29th? And I'll get in touch with Mr. Mueller and Ms. Badiola, and we'll get a draft circulated as promptly as possible. Anyone not available at 9 a.m. on October 29th to adopt an annual report? Okay. Do I hear a motion to set that as our next meeting with a single item on the agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Opposed? Hearing none. Okay. Literally putting it on my calendar now. All right. We have our public comment time was set in the agenda for 10:30 to 10:50. The 2 minutes per person. I don't know if Christina is already running a list of people who wanted to give public comment.
No, not yet.
Okay. Do we want? I mean, we've reached the end of our agenda as other than public comment, so we could stand in recess until 10:30, and then everyone, go refill your coffee, and then come back, and we'll hear public comment, and then adjourn following that. Do I have a motion for a 28-minute recess?
So moved.
Okay. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Let's take a recess until 10:30, and not sure if that actually requires a vote, but all right. All right. Let's come back on then. All right. Good morning again, everyone. It's 10:30, so I want to call the meeting back to order. Christina, I see some hands raised. Are those folks who are wishing to make public comment?
I assume, but I haven't set the rules yet. So,
Okay.
Are you ready to get started?
I think so.
We will now start the public comment portion of this meeting. We have 20 minutes for public comment and each person has 2 minutes to speak. If at the end of 2 minutes you go over, I will state your 2 minutes are over and ask that you please wrap up your comment. Please abide by the protocols of the commission meeting to help this meeting run smoothly. If you would like to comment, please raise your hand using the hand raise tool in the reactions section of Zoom located at the bottom. Looking at the list, we will start with Tim O'Brien.
Very good. My name is Tim O'Brien. If you can hear me, hopefully.
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. My comment is I'm part of the Enumclaw Plateau Community Association. And my comment is to encourage the governor's team to build out the full 19-member work group along with the full complement of citizen representatives. And also that we as a rural community, which had been targeted as a greenfield site, we understand the how impactful these decisions are, and we ask that, in particular from our community, that Kim Anton be considered to join that as a community group, as a citizen community group, who has a lot of knowledge in this endeavor. And the other thing I wanted to mention is, if greenfield sites are considered in the future, that also climate goals and are considered in those decisions. Those are my comments.
Thank you, Mr. O'Brien.
Up next is James Pearson.
All right. Yes, James Pearson from Thurston County, Olympia. Just listening in today, I was a little disappointed because I was hoping to hear more, at least a brainstorming of what the group thought might be some of the things that would be on your agenda for like the next year or so. Sending a draft document to the other members, we haven't seen it in public, so I'm not sure if that meets the act, but I'd like to see, just what are the top 10 things that you think might be somewhere on your agenda, and then see a discussion about that agenda being prioritized. That would be interesting. And that's it. Thank you.
Up next is Tina Durr.
All right, good morning, Mr. Durr. You can unmute your mic. Thank you, Mr. Pearson.
Tina, you should be able to unmute your mic. I've asked for you to unmute yourself. Okay, we're gonna move on. We'll come back to you. Ursula?
Yes, good morning. My name is Ursula Euler, and I'm a longtime observer of the CAWG and now of this work group. I'm a volunteer with 350 Seattle and also plugged in with community members and groups in Thurston County, such as Stop the Airport. I would like this morning to comment on a provision in your charter. I have not seen your charter, but I would strongly encourage you to allow members, including all citizen members, environmental members, community members, to not stop them from communicating with their communities and their constituents. It is my true belief that free speech means that your members can speak to their own supporters in their own words and with their own understanding. It's okay to put some ground rules around that so that communications are truthful and respectful. But trying to muffle those communications, I think, is not in the public interest. Secondly, for future times, I would also like to strongly encourage you to look for independently verifiable data such as demand for aviation that is not sourced from aviation industry. And I will comment on that in the future at future meetings as well when the time comes. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Euler.
Next is Loretta Burns.
Good morning. Yeah, my name is Loretta Burns, and I'm also from Thurston County. And I was looking at the RCW that is the basis for this group. And you all sounded like you're waiting, that you need to do this RFP to get some staff to help you to do coordination and invite the members that you're required to invite. But the RCW says that the Department of Transportation shall provide staff support for coordinating and administering the work group. It also says the next section is at the direction of the work group and as resources allow, DOT is authorized to hire consultants to assist with the review and research efforts of the work group, not to administer or not to do your groundwork in terms of inviting the people to the group that you're required to invite. So I think you should keep that in mind. You guys have this responsibility to do these things and should not be waiting for a consultant who's basically only supposed to be doing review of technical information and research efforts. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Burns. Which well, I'm going to look at the statute. I'll find what you're talking about.
Okay.
Up next is Dylan Orion.
Hello, my name is Dylan Orion. My wife and I live in Thurston County in Evergreen Valley, and we've been involved in this process for a long time, back when it was called the CAWG. And this process has been ongoing since before the pandemic. So just for those who are joining recently and aren't aware of the history, this process has deep roots, and there's a lot of information out there that you can avail yourself of. Just understand what the past process has been and what's got us to where we are today. Sadly, it doesn't seem like a lot has changed. I showed up in person to the last meeting of this particular group and gave a comment and wrote my name and put my email address on the sign up. And yet I had to be told by somebody else that this meeting was taking place today. So obviously my name wasn't added to the default list of folks that it should be going out to. So yeah, what I'm seeing is just a kind of lack of organization overall. Like the full group hasn't even been convened, and meetings are already happening. Decisions are being made. I have no doubt that people are, emailing and speaking in the background, figuring things out. And it's just kind of reminding me of what happened with the CAC, where you guys ended up blaming disorganization and lack of coordination on the failure of the CAC. And I just see that happening all over again with potentially major consequences for the public. So I highly encourage you guys to get this organized, get everybody on board, get the communication going, because lack of trust is just going to build the more this happens.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Ryan. In the chat, I saw that Christina put the email sign up link.
Yes, on the website, they're right on the front page. It says sign up. That's where you sign up for email blasts. And this website has been updated for months. So always check the website. And if you sign up for updates, it will email you. There have been press releases that went out. So yeah, please sign up if you would like to. Next up is Bonnie.
Hello, my name is Bonnie Ecker and I live in Pierce County. I'm on the south border of JBLM, just off of Highway 7. I want to thank you for your website. I actually did not get into it until today, and I discovered that Your purpose of this group is basically gathering information on ways to address transportation issues for the future and possibly the needs for expanding capacities, obviously, due to current crowding issues, rather than determining an airport, which I know so many of us are against. And I think we're all thinking that that's exactly what this work group is about. But I do want to thank you for your website, and I will keep checking that as well. I'm hoping that maybe your draft charter will be posted so that perhaps we as the public can look at it as well. And I'm assuming we can still comment. I see a link on your website for submitting comments and everything. The website actually did answer probably 3 of my questions that I was going to ask here, but as others have said, I kind of see a little disorganization in this group and hope you can come together. And it looks like there is a application online that we as the public might be able to apply for one of those 19 seats in the work group. So that's kind of nice. And I'll go ahead and post that to other people as well. But I want to thank you for having this Zoom meeting today, because I sure don't want to drive down to Thurston County for an in-person meeting.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Ecker. And thank you for highlighting that. I do think the website answers a lot of the questions and addresses some of, for example, Mr. Orion's concerns. I mean, the statute also is pretty clear that the mission of this group is not picking an airport site. And I'll tell you, I am a member of the group because I applied through the website. So, about ever many months ago. So. Who's our next speaker, Christina?
Next speaker is Scott Lay.
Good morning. Took me a moment to get unmuted. First of all, I'm pleased that there were at least 105 people that were on the Zoom count as participants. I think that demonstrates a tremendous amount of interest at this early stage. I noticed that some of the previous leadership of the CAWG also were indicated to be joining this morning, so they're aware of what's happening. I think that's interesting. A couple of housekeeping things. Have any of the motions or business made today or done today been made by or seconded by any member whose term has expired? I think that's an interesting question that should be addressed. Access to these meetings. It does not hurt the group to provide a public link without registration. I'm just always going to stand on that. This meeting has been cordial and organized. Having a public link with no barrier, I think, is important. Registration, I don't have to do it at my city council meeting unless I'd like to speak. I don't have to do it at the county council meeting unless I'd like to speak. So just a public link that can be shared far and wide without having to register would be great. Also, to the point of documentation, I do wish that your will require that anything in writing that you intend to vote for is publicly posted and open for comment 14 to 28 days before you decide to do it. Transparency was a problem with the previous group. Please don't make the same mistake. Also in your charter, a citizen subcommittee or advisory committee might be an interesting idea to address some of the concerns that the 3 groups totaling nearly 20,000 people that formed during the previous process might be another thing to consider. I'll end with, don't forget about Yakima. They're willing, they're able, and should always be an option.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Lay.
Up next is Kim Anson.
Good morning. My name's Kim Anton, and I represent the Enumclaw Plateau Community Association, and I'm also a member of the Citizens Coalition for Pierce and Thurston Counties. We understand that among your first tasks is to develop your charter, and it's been mentioned that you might duplicate that of the predecessor, the CAWG, and we think this would be a grave mistake. We want to draw your attention to the fact that the previous CAWG failed to appreciate the impact that a greenfield site would have on rural communities. Clearly, the lawmakers who developed this work group understood this flaw, and therefore they had the foresight to include 7 citizen representatives on the commercial aviation work group. Now, I'd like to speak directly to the citizen representatives present here today. We need you. We need you to represent us. You are responsible to represent us. We need you to listen to us and speak for us on this council. The only way effective representation can be accomplished is through ongoing, two-way direct dialogue and communication between the citizen reps and the communities they represent. We want to share ideas and collaborate on our region's aviation and transportation solutions. Therefore, we ask the charter that you develop will include a path for citizens and their representatives to speak directly and dialogue directly with each other. We require telephone and email access to each of our individual representatives, and we ask that you establish this direct communication link for us and define it in your charter. Thank you for your attention and your kind consideration of our request.
Sure. Thank you, Ms. Anton. And I want to speak to that because real quick, because I wrote the draft charter and I'm one of the citizen representatives without any industry connection. And when I said I used the prior commission's charter as an outline, that was to make sure that I hit points of things like we needed to have a line in there about using Robert's Rules of Order, and we needed to have a line about the membership and what a quorum would be and things like that. We're going to post the draft charter that I drafted after this meeting on the website. I'm sure Christina can do that. And you'll see that the beginning of it tracks the new statutory language that gives the work group a very distinct mission from the prior commission in response to the public comment that I think came into the legislature after the prior commission's report. So I don't think you're going to be I think you're right to have raised that concern, and I anticipated it in drafting that draft charter.
That's great news. The big concern is the one-way chat box, or not. That's not a chat box. It's a public comment box. There's no dialogue in that system, so we need a dialogue. And I think if you want to limit it just to the citizen representatives so that the whole committee isn't being inundated, that would be of great benefit for everyone involved.
Thanks, Sarah. I think we're still exploring all those sorts of ideas.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, up next is Jeff Cohen.
Yeah, Jeff Cohen from Thurston County here. You're likely going to hear some frustration about this process, which you're inheriting from the CAC. Since the actions of the CAC over the last few years has been traumatic for many residents, I think some history for this current group is important, and I'll share more of that in the future. I'm asking today that you do your best to identify and understand what the potential challenges actually are, then prioritize the needs of the residents over corporate and political goals in your plans. I want to thank you for volunteering your time for this group and for the opportunity to speak today. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Cohen. Nice.
Okay, I'm gonna try Tina Dare again. Tina, you should be able to unmute yourself if you'd like to speak.
Yes, hi, thank you. As a citizen and someone who was involved with the citizen effort to get our voices heard, I just am thankful to see that you have now are including the public whose lives are most directly affected by decisions that are made. And I just would like to continue to have the communications, the emails when you're talking about the charters and things, to be able to have access to read and look at those. I don't know what the ability to have those available for just the public to see, but I appreciate the opportunity to be a part of this going forward. I've been on many boards and I know the complications that are involved, just getting things accomplished. But I think most important, just that you hear the voice of the public going forward. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr.
Up next is Luvi Howell. It looks like you've unmuted yourself, but I can't hear anything. Okay, we're going to move on to Brenda Wilmo.
Hello. A lot of my concerns have already been addressed, and I am from Thurston County. I was born in Thurston County. I was born in Olympia, and transparency to me is very important. I wanted to know how the public would be able to view the charter draft, the report, and also the RFP, if that's a public document. Hopefully that will all be available to the public to view. The other thing I did want to talk about is I appreciate that this is a group that will study all modes of transportation in Washington State. But with that, please be mindful. I feel like Thurston County government and nearly 10,000 citizens signed a petition opposing a siting of a new international airport in Thurston and Pierce County. Many people gave written and oral testimony to our legislature and to the prior CAC. There was sign waving to do outreach to bring the transparency and awareness to the public. The water quality and protection of our aquifer was of great concern, plus the preservation and our natural environment for our future generations, and to protect the very environment that will mitigate our climate. So please, I'm asking you to consider and be mindful of our environment and our wildlife in any transportation decision, in any format that you're going to be studying. Please be mindful. The wildlife does not have a voice. Our waters, our forests, and all of our environment will mitigate our climate. Thank you.
All right.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak? I don't see any other hands.
All right. Well, thank you all very much. Do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Motion carries, and we'll see you all at 9 a.m. on the 29th with a single item on the agenda to adopt an annual report.